Hi, and welcome to another episode of Rate That Album, where two guys, myself and my cohort and colleague, Joseph Fremming, dive into music albums and give our information about the album, go into kind of the history, things of that. But before we get to that, Joe, sir, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing fantastic, Paul.
That's good. That's good.
You know, the world's on fire. We have a global pandemic. And, people are still worshiping Trump. And it's just, it's the dumbest timeline I think I could have ever stumbled into.
They made him a golden statue, Joe. Nothing bad ever happened in the Bible when worshiping a golden statue.
Some of these people have had to watch Dogma and saw the same thing happen, right? The movie's cow.
I think most of these people, if I remember correctly, were protesting, and Kevin Smith was brilliant enough to dress up as one of them and protest with them. There's actually an interview of him being interviewed, a video of him being interviewed while he was out protesting with protesters in his hometown of Dogma and being interviewed by the news.
Yep, local station.
Yep, local station. So, quick answer is no, I don't think they did because they were so offended by it. But again, alas, we are, as we've talked about many times, in the dumbest timeline that could possibly timeline.
Enough of the suits in Washington, Paul. Let's talk some music.
Please and thank you. This is a different episode. We're doing a twofer. You're getting two for the price of one with this one, mostly because the two things the albums that we looked at were EPs, and EPs are traditionally short, and we didn't want to just give you guys a short album, so we talked amongst ourselves and said, you know what, let's throw another shorter album on top of that. So today you're getting polar opposites with Matt Pond's PA EP of Winter Songs and Morbid Angel's second studio album, Blessed Are the Sick. Let's start with Matt Pond PA, shall we, Joe?
Absolutely.
Matt Pond PA is a New York-based band that formed in Philadelphia. There are basically three main members of the band now, which is Matt Pond, Chris Hansen, and Sean Alpay. But they have well over 20 members that have been in the band since 1988 to now. They are still putting out music now. But in 2017, he said that he was going to retire the Matt Pond PA, but would continue making music. And as of 2020, he brought back Matt Pond PA. So this has been like a pet project for Matt Pond. How familiar are you with him?
Not very.
Okay.
Not very at all.
No. And I think we'll talk a little bit about kind of the hype around this EP. Around this time, there was what's that?
What year are we talking about, Paul?
So this album came out in 2005. January, very early January 2005. And they had an album beforehand called Emblems, which got a lot of college radio play and was kind of talked about among kind of the who's in Hollywood and in kind of the film industry, because stuff on that album, and I don't know exactly what's what for that, caught attention. And soon afterwards with this EP, songs were being used for commercials, and going forward, Matt Pond had a very successful, in a way, for writing songs that were picked up for various soundtracks. This EP is only 7 tracks long, and it's filled with 4 covers, 3 original tunes. Joe, I want to get your impressions of what you got with this EP.
This it's funny you brought up the soundtrack. This sounded like the soundtrack to every indie hipster movie that came out in the early to mid 2000s. Like, like little projects that like what comes to mind is like the movie The Baxter with like Michael Showalter, like just like, it just reminds me of like a sad guy in New York who gets his heart broken. Like it just I've seen so many movies like that, or even like a Wes Anderson movie, and it's just like, yeah, this is definitely fits into the soundtrack of that. And for the most part, I liked it. For the most part, there's two songs on here I felt were completely unnecessary.
Ooh, okay. On a 7-song EP, having 2 songs that are unnecessary isn't necessarily a glowing review. I want to point that out. What were the 2 songs that you did not care for?
Well, so what I do like about this, there's a lot of good songs on here, but when you choose cover songs, it's tough.
Uh-huh.
And there's bands that really don't ever need to be covered. Most obvious ones are like, the Beatles.
Yep.
And oddly enough, I throw into that category would be Neil Young.
Yes.
He does his arrangements really well the first time around. He's not like Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's arrangements are really almost second thought. So that's why the covers of his music tend to be a little bit better, like All Along the Watchtower and whatnot. Neil Young does it right the first time. So when you get Winter Long, it feels like this is a song that didn't need a cover.
Yep.
And in the same vein, Neutral Milk Hotel does not need to be covered. And on this album, he covers In the Airplane Over the Sea. Their gel and their cadence in the vocals and all that, it really should only just stick with that band. Doing a cover of them, like I can see it live being a little fun because a lot of people love Neutral Milk Hotel, and I'm one of them.
Yep.
But for recording, I would just completely shy away from it. You're in a reason why. How much are you going to add to it? And with Matt Ponpier, they added almost nothing to that.
So I'm always amazed at how in sync we are when we come to these, because those are the 2 weak ones to me as well. And I do, Neil Young. Yeah, you don't cover Neil. I've done Neil Young live, in a band before. You don't stray away from it though. You do it verbatim. It's just not something that needs its own spin on a Neil Young song. I'm in agreement with that. And same thing with Neutral Milk Hotel, the way that you describe it. I also, oddly enough, I know they're very different, but I put them in the same category as Belle and Sebastian, which is they do their own thing. They have their own very unique sound. And I've thought over the years of trying to cover a Neutral Milk Hotel song, a Belle and Sebastian song, and I've always been like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it anything like it should be done. Like, it's just, there's things about that. And you're absolutely right. There are bands out there that don't need to be covered, shouldn't be covered. And I felt those were the 2 weakest ones as well, which goes against my theory of track 3 being strong. Track 3 was not very strong.
No, it was, and especially a song, again, Neil Young, he's so particular with his arrangements that it's really hard to cover and cover it well. Like I can, outside maybe, I think, I can't, it's hard for me to even think of people who've covered his music and did it to a point where I thought that it was good. I can almost say no, there's none. I can't think of any Neil Young cover I like. It's just is hard, and the same with Neutral Milk Hotel. But on the flip side of that, the other 5 songs I really do enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As a matter of fact, Matt Pond really grew in popularity because the first track, Snow Days, which I think is a very strong opener, got used in Starbucks commercials. And was playing. He was putting his this EP out in Starbucks. So yeah, I think that there was they are really good. Even the instrumentals with it, which was the next song 2, which was Fall 2.
And then Winter 1 too. I like the instrumentals too.
A lot. And I said I was familiar with one song on this album, and that was the Lindsey Buckingham cover, Holiday Road, which I adore.
Yeah. It's, you know, I mean, it's even weird to think of a Lindsey Buckingham cover. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to cover, like, the obvious choice would like go to the Fleetwood Mac well. But since I don't think a lot of people, I mean, I'm not even super familiar with Lindsey Buckingham just because when it comes to Fleetwood Mac, I'm a Peter Green guy in that era, like the dirty blues stuff. Mm-hmm. Not a big fan of Rumors and all that.
I will say I'm the opposite of that, but go on.
Yeah, but the obvious choice, you know, you'd probably go to something from Rumors or, you know, there's 70s, like the Stevie Nicks Buckingham era. Like, that'd be the obvious choice. So the fact that he went with Holiday Road was like, I think it was a pretty smart. Because you're going with a song that not a lot of people know. And, well, some people know, but not as well as...
I don't know. I mean, that song was huge because of National Lampoons. I mean, people of our generation probably, but younger generations maybe don't know it so much.
Yeah. But still, it's, you know, I think for a cover, that one was like more appropriate than saying cover Neil Young or Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah.
It felt like more in the vein of this album too.
Absolutely. And, you know, Winter Songs, I think, is an appropriate title for this album. In listening to it, I was driving around in the car, and it just, I pictured this was something that came to his mind, probably on a tour bus somewhere where it was cold and snowy, and these songs just formed in his head, because this, just like we talked about with American Head being a winter album, this is truly a winter EP.
Yeah. So a lot of it works, but like the two things that stick, like I would like, if I was going to like listen to this again, I'd probably make a Spotify mix and just do it without Winter Long and Airplane Over the Sea.
Now, what did you think of what I felt of all of them was a weird band, the cover, even weirder than Neil Young and Neutral Milk Hotel, was the Linda and Richard Thompson cover.
I liked it.
I liked it too, but who covers Linda Thompson?
But here's the thing. Cover something that's outside, you know, cover something that's a little different, you know, same like, you know, the weird choice of Holiday Road, you know, I mean, but if, you know, you're going to cover Neil, just, you know, if you're going to cover something, I'd say go outside the mainstream. Like, that's why, like, back in the day when I used to go to Phish concerts, they would cover like bands that were not like Phish.
Yes.
And that was a lot of that makes it a lot more fun, I think, because they add a little something different to it.
Now, I'm going to say, and I want to, you know, again, to me, the highlight of this is the Holiday Road. That's me. Now, I am big into Lindsey Buckingham. I have all of his solo stuff. I modeled my own guitar playing after Lindsey Buckingham with not playing a pick, and because I was enthralled at when I learned that when he was fired from Fleetwood Mac, they had to hire 2 guitarists to do what he was doing on one guitar. People couldn't do it. And so I am absolutely in love with Buckingham. And when I first heard this, when I found out about this cover, I was like, oh God, this is going to suck. And it's so different and in such a different vein, and it slows it way down. And the production throughout the entire album, I would say, or EP, the production is really top notch. I really like the little sounds and inlays they do on it. And I could see where Snow Day is very commercial. But it's indie commercial, right?
Snow Day is actually my favorite song on here.
It's my number two. It's my number two, which is interesting because I normally don't go towards commercial music, not because I'm against it or like I'm instantly biased for it. It's just I have my own. Again, my favorite musician is Frank Zappa, so I have a completely different view of music than most people. But I was really drawn to that one as well. I'm glad we picked this EP, and this was supposed to propel the album emblems, and then this were really supposed to push Matt Pond PA into becoming a big thing. They came out with another album afterwards called Several Arrows Later. My understanding is, I don't know if it's Matt Pond himself, if it's other artists going into other things, but there's a lot of turnover in Matt Pond PA. Like I said, there's been over 20 past members, which I think is what keeps holding it back. Is you have these other people that are involved in a great album, and by the time the next album comes out, you have a new drummer, a new bassist, or a new guitarist, or a combination of all three.
I guess because there's bands that I like that have had large turnover that's successful. I'm wondering if this, like Matt Pond, this is kind of like a Nine Inch Nails situation, like Trent Reznor's Infamous. Like if you look at the band list of people who's been in Nine Inch Nails, it's staggering. Same with like a band called like Pigface. Just everybody and their grandma's been in Pigface. El Jorgensen, Trent Reznor,
Yeah, and I think that's kind of it. And I think I get the vibe. I get a indie Trent Reznor vibe when I look in the Matt Pond, that this guy's somewhat of a perfectionist, has what he wants to have, wants to do what he wants to do, and if people aren't for it, he can get someone that will do it.
Yep.
Yeah. But where you go, man, what is Matt Pond doing now? Matt Pond had created his own label, 131 Records, and has really been pushing and working on getting other artists out there on the labels and doing those types of thing. It was released in 2016 from a desire to retain complete control over his music. He uses Patreon to allow fans to interact and contribute and support them. So yeah. He's just that guy. He is that guy. And their latest album was Songs of Disquiet, released in August 7th of 2020. So Matt Pond's doing well in terms of people using some of his music for movies. There was some songs that were used for Delivery Man with Vince Vaughn. And other songs that have just been kind of taken over the years and used. So yeah, I think he's not hurting. He's doing what he wants to do, and I don't think he gives two shits. And I think you really hear it on this EP, what he thinks people want to hear. He's making music for him, and that's all that it matters.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I like it. I do. I like it. I completely agree with you. Make a playlist of this one. Remove the track 3 and the final track 7, and I think you got a solid EP. So, anything else you want to discuss about this particular album?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, let's dig into our second album, which is a complete another contrast. Blessed Are the Sick by death metal band Morbid Angel. Joe, what were your thoughts on Blessed Are the Sick, Morbid Angel?
I am very particular when it comes to metal, especially this kind of metal. And there's things I really like about this album, but for me, there's a lot that's wrong with it. And a lot of that I'm very particular with metal music, especially when it comes to vocals.
Uh-huh.
And if you're sounding like you're vomiting in your own mouth, like all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I typically shy away. It's just not my particular taste is not with that, and that's what we kind of have here.
Mm-hmm.
And I also my other big complaint is the tracking of the drums. It sounds like Lars Ulrich on Saint Anger.
Thank you for saying that because I felt the same way on this one. I was like, man, this is good, but Jesus, the drumming needs some work.
Yeah, I mean, I think the drumming bothered me more than the vocals.
Yeah.
So it was just like,
yeah.
when this was like recorded in the early 90s, and that
this was recorded in 90. Well, it was released in 91, so you could say it was recorded in 89, 90, and 1990.
Well, there's no excuse for the drums sounding this bad when Led Zeppelin could do it in a mobile studio for Led Zeppelin 2, still be able to get those really nice drum sounds. This just sounds like a guy hitting a fucking trash can.
Yeah, there's something. I love speed drumming, but this is not speed drumming done right. In my regards, it's just speed for speed, and there were several times in the album where I was taken out because I felt like whoever mixed it didn't catch or didn't care that it went off beat for a little bit on some of the songs, because it does go off beat, and I have an issue with that. I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to that. As someone that have written their own music, I've scrapped songs before because I just could not get the beat to match right. I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm not even gonna. This song, to me, that's a sign that the song does not need to be recorded, so I'm throwing it out. So let's talk a little bit about Morbid Angel. So Morbid Angel, it's funny because again we talk about what the band called Death, right? they formed in 1983. Morbid Angel did, and the original member Trey, as I cannot pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try. Vocalist and bassist Dallas Ward and drummer Mike Browning. Those are considered, it's widely considered one of the most influential bands and important to the transition of death metal from its thrash metal roots. They were one of the first bands to incorporate the vocals that we're talking about, the up-tempo blast beats, multiple tempo changes, as well as the lyrical content that is death metal or black metal. They have been described as, quote, the most influential and emulated bands in death metal, alongside Obituary, Death, Cynic, Autopsy, and Decide. And a lot of bands really in that genre really hold Morbid Angel to a very high esteem. Morbid Angel got really their first exposure by having the song "A God of Emptiness" shown on Beavis and Butthead. And their first three albums, Altar of Madness, Blessed of the Sick, and Covenant, are considered absolute classics. And their first album is rated Altars of Madness in the top 40 greatest death metal albums of all time by Decibel Magazine. And with the guitarist Trey being number one for death metal guitarist ever. They are the third best-selling band after Cannibal Corpse and Decide. And they were really one of the first ones that were really focused on Satanism, occultism, and anti-Christian subject matter. They also bring in Sumerian mythology, Simon's Necronomicon, as well as lyrics about H.P. Lovecraft. They also later really got into lyrics about the Roman Empire. Now, with this particular album, main composer Trey dedicated it to Mozart. And really felt that this was a ode to Mozart. Joe, how do you feel about that?
I'm fine with it. The instrumentation, sans drums, I thought was phenomenal. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my sticking point, and this is also like when the vocalist, in my opinion, I don't like it. Really makes it hard. Like I have the same thing like Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Araya's vocals, I can't fucking stand, but I can listen to the music.
Yep.
And there's just, for me, like there are metal vocalists who can kind of like balance between these kind of worlds. The one that comes to mind is Phil Anselmo from Pantera.
Yep.
He kind of walks that line between like kind of like not exactly like Morbid Angel, but like getting kind of more of the gruff vein of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of like my sticking point. It's just, and again, that's just my personal bias. Like I'm sure, lots of people love this band. So, I mean, they're not going to agree with me, and that's all right. I'm bringing my point of view to this.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And I'll be honest with you. When I'm very picky about my death metal, and I'm very much into the classics. I am a fan of Morbid Angel. I'm a fan of Cannibal Corpse and 6 Feet Under, which fans of the genre will know I'm kind of cheating because Chris Barnes is in both Cannibal Corpse and 6 Feet Under. But those are like my three that I hold all other death metal to is those three bands. Now, my problem with black metal, death metal, thrash metal is, and I'll even bring up I'll tell a story. I went to a concert and it was headlining Black Sabbath. It was second in line was Pantera, and third was a very unknown band called Incubus, who were opening for those two bands. To give you an idea, Black Sabbath's first reunion tour, 1998, I think it was. 98. Yeah, it was 98. So we were juniors in high school. And in 98, Incubus was not known very well outside of certain circles. I fell in love with Pantera. That was really my first. I heard Pantera, but I never got it. And then I saw them live, and I was like, my God, this is awesome. And I went out and bought the album there. And I was listening on the way back, and I'm like, I don't like this. And it hit me. And this is something that I've had a real problem with is Morbid Angels, Blessed of the Sick has the same problem. And I hope it's gotten better over the years. It has. But the recording is too clean. It's too restrained. You listen to it and you can tell there's this vacuum there. There's this space there. The albums are too quiet. They're too clean. It needs that live. Like I will buy any live Pantera album over any of their studio albums. And I've gone that way with a lot of death metal and black metal because it needs that extra noise. It needs those guitar levels and the drum levels and the bass levels to be all over the place. There's not the kind of music that should be boxed in tracks that feel very uniform and very clean. And that's my problem overall with the album is the production is too clean, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think metal too, it's hard to really capture that on record, especially with a band like Morbid Angel, which I imagine the live stuff's a lot wild and grittier and
a lot better.
Probably more up my alley. And like you with that Black Sabbath show a few years ago when I was living in Bemidji, Slayer came, and it was Slayer, Lamb of God, and Behemoth. Behemoth. I was like live. I was just like, these bands are just awesome. And it's hit and miss when I go and listen to their studio stuff. Like, huh.
Yeah.
It's really like a genre that like almost overall benefits better live.
Yes, Lamb of God is another one of those bands that obviously is in very high esteem among those that love the genre, including myself. And I'm the same way on that. If there's a live version, if there's like a live and there's a studio and I'm going to get the same song mixes, I pick the live. It's just the way it goes. There's artists I'm the very opposite of. There's certain ones I'm like, you don't want their live stuff. But when it comes to these bands, I think the energy that they thrive in the crowd and that noise and that ability of being able to have it at higher levels than some stiff guy sitting behind a music board is going to allow them to do is really what's missing. I think people, it's become very divisive, but the Metallica Black Album used to be universally loved, and as Metallica went their weird way, I'm of the camp that I don't like the direction they went after the Black Album. I could see why people look at that as like the focal turning point, but the way that sounded, it had that space, it had that live, it had that grittiness to the album, and I wish more of these bands would allow that to happen when they record these studio albums.
Yeah. And it's hard to capture. It just really is.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that live essence.
Yeah, and so overall, getting to it, Joe, what were your highlights from Blessed Are the Sick?
So, all right. So for me, there are some highlights. It's kind of hard with the tracks just because, like, I find some of the stuff distracting. I found the 1-2 punch of Blessed Are the Sick and Leading the Rats.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that overall, and it was like the one track where I didn't feel distracted by the vocals. The drumming still, I mean, they just didn't track it very well at all throughout the whole thing. That's just bad. It just wasn't good. And then, like, there was like the weird interludes.
Yes.
That I kind of liked. Doomsday Celebration I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Desolate Ways. And I think mostly because it was just kind of different feeling.
Yep.
But at the end, I did not like in Remembrance. I thought it was kind of hokey as a piano outro. Considering it's just like, this was like kind of like in your face, kind of like, aggressive. And it's just like, why end it on a soft note? But like, Blessed Are the Sick and Leading the Rats, I thought was a really awesome 1-2 punch. That was probably my favorite.
So
and then the little interludes. Again, it was like it's overproduced at times. Especially, and here's the thing: even though I like those two songs, it ends with a flute.
Yes.
And that really kind of upset me for some reason.
Let's see.
Like, are you fucking Jethro Tull all of a sudden? What's going on?
So, I for me, I love, honestly, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me and go, "You're not a real death metal fan." Believe me, I am. On this one, Desolate Ways is one of my favorite tracks on this thing. So much so that it reminded me of Randy Rhoads' D in its own right. And it was that track that made me realize just the technical and creative talent that's in this band. I think that's something that's sorely overlooked when it comes to heavy metal is these guys are talented, very, very talented. You can't just pick you could pick any fucking asshat off the street and make a punk album. We know that because of the Sex Pistols. You can't pick any asshat off the street and make good death metal. It takes talent. I learned Desolate Ways was one of the first songs I learned in tablature when I picked up the guitar. I absolutely love that one. Unholy Blasphemies, love that song. It's just so in your face. And to think that it was a 1986 re-recorded demo song I'm going to repeat that. Unholy Blasphemies was recorded in 1986. Again, we couldn't have a band named Death. How many years? 10 years earlier. But we can have Unholy Blasphemies and Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse and another band called Death come out 7 years later. Just a travesty.
Well, yeah, the guitar work on this is just phenomenal. That was like what stood out to me, and I enjoyed all of that, and the bass work I liked.
Bass work's so good.
Yeah, it's like in the arrangements for like death metal. Like you said, they're kind of changing like time signatures or whatnot. It kind of feels at times like kind of how classical music goes like through different feels.
Yep.
I feel like they did that really, really, really well.
Yeah, and that's why when I asked you like, oh, how do you think about it that's dedicated to Mozart? And my personal opinion is, yeah, I can see exactly why this was dedicated to Mozart. It's
just because it feels like kind of like you can hear that classical music inspiration, and a lot of that you hear a lot of that in some of like a lot of metal.
Yes.
And if you listen to Randy Rhoads. Like not even just the D acoustic, but like just how he arranged things for like Blizzard of Oz. Mm-hmm. Very inspired by classical music.
And I think that's something that gets lost on your average person that's not into these type of things. Is that I've drawn a very definitive line between classical music and death metal, heavy metal, black metal. The way they go about it is very, very similar. I don't care who you are. I think most death metal members are fans of classical music and vice versa. I do. Because it is the arrangements that they come up with. You look at what's his name, Mario Batali. That's the chef. What's Mario Angelo, who plays the double-headed guitar for Nitro. He was in the band Nitro, right? Michelangelo Bato. And he is known, this guy had a 4-headed guitar on stage at one point, hoisted, so he could flip it and play whatever. And if you don't think that there's classical roots in what he was doing on there, you're fucking nuts.
And it's interesting, metal is like one of the few genres that actually, I feel, kind of carries the torch of classical.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe, if you're getting into prog, I can see it, but like metal really like kind of sneaks it in.
I think for me, it doesn't sneak it in. It's for me, it's very in your face because I see what they're doing, and I'm a big fan of both genres. Honestly, I can go like that's why I enjoy like Desolate Ways and I actually enjoyed In Remembrance. I think that was a nod in a way to them. I don't know if it was a knock or a nod to Faith No More, because Faith No More's Epic came out 2 years before this album did. So I'm sure he was like, oh, Mike Patton's gonna play piano. Fuck that! I'm gonna show him I can play piano. I just envision that in the studio, right? And going from like Rebel Lands to Doomsday Celebration to Days of Suffering, I could see where some of your some fans would be turned off by this. What is this? They're doing this. What is this light garbage thing? But you can hear those arrangements just sped up in songs all throughout the album, like Thy Kingdom Come. So you like Blessed of the Sick, Leading the Rats, you like Desolate Ways, and Doomsday Celebration.
Yep.
Creepy
Organ, man. I love it when bands throw me like a curveball like that. It's just like, I like that. Maybe I'm easily amused or whatnot, but fuck it.
No, absolutely. And I love that when you hear these things, and that's why it didn't bother me when I heard the flute and they became all Jethro Tull. I'm like, they're showing off that they're serious musicians.
The flute was too much.
All right.
It was too much. All right. Like, your metal, like, act like you're metal. Creepy organs are okay, but a flute, come on. Like, Now you're just showing off, and it's not impressing me.
Well, this is the one point we'll agree to disagree on that one, because I enjoyed it, because once again, I think this was more Trey showing the critics that this is what we can do, but we love making death metal. If you wanted me to write, wanted me to be Jethro Tull, I could be Jethro Tull. If you wanted me to be Liberace, I could be Liberace. But this is what I'm fucking choosing to do. So I, for all the faults in the drumming, right? Like, I would love to see a reissue and a remaster of this if they're still around, and have someone fix that drumming. Because I think if you fix the drumming tracking, this would be an overall solid album.
Well, I think the one I listened to was a remaster on Spotify.
Oh shit! Okay. I don't know if the one I listened to I don't think was a remaster, but I have an old CD of
the full dynamic range edition was the one I listened to.
Okay, nope. See, I have the old yeah, I have the old CD.
If it makes you feel any better, they didn't fix the drumming, and if they did, like, I don't want to hear the version you have, because the upgrade is pretty bad.
Yeah, it is the lacking part of it, which is unfortunate, because drums, drum and bass is one of the, for any musical endeavoring, is the bass, is the foundation, right? You can't.
It's like they put the mic right up to the drum set. Like, what are you doing? Give it time, give it some space to breathe, and like get some fucking echo and shit on that.
There is no echo. There is nothing. Like I said, it's way too clean. It's just like, oh my God, like I could tell this is in the studio. And when it comes to heavy metal, death metal, black metal, last thing I want to be remembered is that this is in a studio. Like, no, it needs to have its space. And in this one, you can tell that the space is very oppressive on this album, is the best way I can describe it.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, still a shorter episode overall, but we've jumped through two. You and I, very, very similar takes on this. We have far better. Blessed Are the Sick would be a far better album with better drums. And in comparison, again, totally two different things that we listen to. The Winter Songs was very indie. You could tell it was very indie, but that doesn't mean it's bad. So, going to Matt Pompier, would you recommend the EP as a whole?
Not as a whole.
Okay.
Like I said, the two tracks that I found distracting. Put it on a playlist and get rid of those two. I'd suggest listening to it, but just it's not really, as a whole product, those two tracks just really undid a lot of things for me. So if you're going to say as a whole, I would say no. But if you want to take the individual tracks and put them, the other 5 tracks and do it, yeah, absolutely, because those are really good songs.
I'm in complete agreement with you on that one. And for Blessed Are the Sick, would you recommend that Morbid Angel album?
It's not my thing, so I'm not going to be disingenuous. I don't care for it, so I probably wouldn't recommend it. I mean, if you're a huge death metal fan, yeah. But imagine if you're a death metal fan, you already know this album. So my recommendation really wouldn't alter your point of view on it, but I didn't care for a lot of it, so it's just not my thing. Like, I'm very particular. Like, the metal bands I listen to are a lot of droning and prog leaning. So,
I enjoy a lot of different types of it. If you are getting into death metal, heavy metal, black metal, any metal really, I would recommend this album. It is a classic. It's still rated one of the best. It's always in the top 40, top 50, top 25 metal albums of all, death metal albums of all time. Morbid Angel is really, again, a lot of the genre owes its roots to this. This is, I would call it a blueprint to what is death metal, especially given what it was. Yes, don't take notes on the drumming aspect of it, or do take notes to go, that's not what we want to do, especially if you're getting into, like, say, a death metal band. But I do think that the history of this album, the importance of this album, and just of Morbid Angel in general, I would have to say I recommend this one. Not even with a caveat. The caveat is if you hate the genre, you're not going to like it. You just aren't. You're not going to find anything in it that you're going to enjoy. As a fan of it, though, yeah, if you haven't heard it and you've only heard modern metal, give this a go and go back and check out bands like Morbid Angel, like Cannibal Corpse, like 6 Feet Under, and early Lamb of God, and see really where it came from. That's my take on it. So, first time I think we disagreed on an album, Joe.
Yeah, it's all right though.
Absolutely. I completely. I'm more into it than you are, and I kind of expected that. Each metal genre, just like any genre, really, like there's certain prog. I love prog, but there's certain prog I can't take.
Oh God, some of that Rick Wakeman shit, man. Holy fuck.
If you want to go as far as John Tesh, even, I think he considers himself somewhat prog. Fuck that guy and his guitar.
Yeah, metal is so diverse, and I think there's enough. There's so many subgenres of metal. Like there's something out there for everybody.
Yeah.
And this one I appreciate the musicianship a lot. Like I really did. It's not something that is for me. I mean, if you like death metal and all that, this is going to be up your alley. So, but for me, like I lean more toward, like the Mastodons and fucking the Sword and weird shit like that. Like that's the niche I fall into.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like there's a lot right now of supposed hard rock, heavy metal out there that I can't stand. A lot of it, because it's getting radio play, and that to me means it's not dangerous. With this type of thing, I come from an era, and so do you. We come from an era where this was underground. Like you didn't let your parents know that you were listening to this shit. You didn't tell a lot of your friends that I'm listening to fucking Morbid Angel and bands of that nature, and it wasn't happy. We'll get into that another time, but because I'm sure we're gonna hit an album that I put as the pinnacle. I know we're gonna hit that album that I denote as the time when rock became shit. I know we're gonna review that album because I'm gonna bring it forward at some point.
$3 bill, y'all.
Close. All right, Joe, what do you got going on? Plug time, buddy.
So this week, the Joe Down, we are releasing our review of This Is the End, the Seth Rogen, James Franco stoner comedy about the apocalypse.
Yes.
It's, you'll read it in the review. It's a hard one for us to review since that kind of comedy is already riffing. And that's kind of what Brown and I do in the review. So that was a tough one. But I think it turned out pretty well. After that, we are doing Tango and Cash.
Oof.
Yeah. And then we're taking a hiatus for a while just because work is getting a little intense for Brown with sports.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
So we have
baseball
winter sports.
Season.
Yeah, we have winter sports wrapping up and baseball starting. So we're going to take a brief hiatus so he doesn't get overworked. So there'll be like a month where the only thing I'm focused on is, our podcast. So
I'm okay with that. I hope our audience is okay with that. The podcast audience. For us, on this side, we're going to do the second, Cast That movie, coming up here in the next week or two. We'll be recording that. That is going to be the movie Bugs with Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd. And the turn of cartoon into a live action is going to be Codename Kids Next Door. So that should be an interesting one there. I do plan on having the Stranger Things podcast up in a week. First episode of that you'll be able to listen to. And other than that, I think we got to sit down and figure out when we're going to start Parks and Recs. Yep. And so there's a lot going on there. So more podcasts for people.
Yes, sir, indeed. And now I'm gonna talk about our next album.
Yes, please. I'm curious to hear what you're gonna pick.
This is an album you and I have hated since high school.
I know where you're going already. Go on.
It is the only album by this band that I listened to once and refused to ever listen to again. And they're one of my favorite bands.
Fuck, I know what you're doing. All right.
We are doing A Momentary Lapse of Reason by Pink Floyd.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad.
I feel like we needed a challenge again.
Yeah.
And this is an album that I could never, ever get into. I think people who enjoy it are lying. I think people who say they enjoy Gilmore-led Floyd, post-Waters Floyd, are lying. Because it's not that good. But yeah, we will be revisiting A Momentary Lapse of Reason. The original. I know they did like a reissue with more of the contributions by Nick Mason and Rick Wright, but I'm not letting Gilmore rewrite history with his bullshit, so we're going with the original.
Love it. No, let's not let him rewrite it because so there's a friend of mine, I'm sure he listens to this show, he'll know who he is. I'm not going to call him out by name, but you know who you are, who absolutely loves this album and loves Division Bell, considers those the best of Pink Floyd works. And
this person is a liar, a damn liar.
I sometimes feel like he makes that point to be difficult and to have debates on. God damn it. I haven't listened to that album since high school. I don't think I've listened to that album.
I listened to it once my sophomore year, Paul, and I was so upset. And I've tried to listen to it over the years. I'd started and probably get like not even halfway through. I'm like, this is bullshit. Turn it off.
So I'll tell. I've always danced around this story. I'll tell this story. So Pink Floyd was one of the first bands I really got into, and it was because of you and your friends. I was a big part of it, but it was always, people talk about Pink Floyd, and my parents listened to KQ when I was younger, and they were always playing something of Pink Floyd, but I never really, I wanted to hear it. And when I first got into it, I was like, if I'm going, and I take this route with any music I get into, again, I know I'm very different. I don't go out and buy an album just to buy. If I'm really going to get into it, I'll buy, especially if there's multiple albums. I want to hear the history of the band. So I went out and bought Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and then worked my way. I looked up what their albums were in order and bought them in order, sans the Japanese imports and the weird, British EPs and things of that nature that were really rare to get your hands on. And it came to Momentary Lapse of Reason, and I don't even think I listened to it all the way through. Like, there were songs I would just skip it. And then Division Bell was better, but I had all these Pink Floyd albums, and I was dating this girl that knew I was very much into Pink Floyd. And so for my birthday, what does she do? She buys me a Pink Floyd album, knowing I have all of them. or at least I thought she knew because she saw my entire thing. And I remember telling her, yeah, that's every Pink Floyd album. Bought me every Pink Floyd album. And I remember bitching to her about this particular album. And then she bought me that one. And I realized that she wasn't listening to a word I was saying the entire time we were dating. And we broke up shortly thereafter because that was like not because she gave me that album, because that was like wow, she is not retaining anything in our conversations. Like, this is not a good relationship at this point. So yeah, we ended up breaking up essentially over Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Well, it's a good album to really spitefully dump somebody over, because I would be irate if somebody gave me that. I'm not gonna lie. I hate that album so much. And like, let's be honest, not all the Floyd albums are great, but they have parts that I can appreciate.
Yeah,
we'll get into that in the review, but like, even like Uma Guma, like there's things on there I'm like, all right, I kind of like that, you know.
Yeah, but Uma Guma is not a great album.
No,
let's also put that out there. Seamus is not a great song.
No, no. With Uma Guma, the live album that's with it is probably like the highlight.
Yes, yeah, the live section of it's great. Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, I think we could really dig into Pink Floyd, and I'll let you have. It's your album, so I'll let you have the stage and let you.
We both know a lot. It's a perfect lawsuit album. This is also an album that's a perfect example of why corporate rock should have died in 1979.
Completely agree. We'll definitely get into that, because it is, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, we'll tell you next episode that it is a lawsuit album. And it's a lawsuit album where
lawsuits.
Nobody was going to win on any side with this album.
And not only that, it spawned lawsuits too. It was not even like a result of like a lawsuit. It spawned more.
It spawned more. It really is a powder keg, this particular album of a Pink Floyd drama.
Yeah, it's the lowest point, I think, of the band.
Yes. Yeah, from that point of view, yes. There is a spot I think is another low point, but maybe not as low as that one.
Yeah, but they had a lot of low points, but
they did. Once
you get the lawyers involved, and it becomes just obnoxious. Obnoxious to the point of like they didn't even start reconciling until 20 years later.
Yeah, and even then, would you even call it reconciling? Because I wouldn't.
Tolerating one another is probably the best.
But, even that's gotten ugly with social media.
Yeah.
And we'll
get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into
that when we talk, because it's a bullshit album with bullshit intentions made by a bullshit leader. I'll just leave it at that.
I think that's the perfect way to do it. Now, I will make the audience a promise. I'll make you a promise. As much as I hate it, I am going to critique it fairly. I will listen to each track, and I will put aside anything personal of it and try to review it on its own merits as best I can. So that is something I am going to try to do for you and the audience next episode.
Well, I appreciate you do that with Gilmore's second worst solo album. Until next time.